The Beverly Hillbillies is probably one of the most recognizable shows from the 1960s era. It starred Buddy Ebsen, Irene Ryan, Donna Douglas, and Max Baer Jr. as the Clampetts. It was created by Paul Henning, and the show was produced by Filmways Productions. The premise of the show is pretty simple, but yet really funny. A poor backwoods family from the hills of the Ozarks moved to posh Beverly Hills, California. This is all after they strike black gold on their land in Missouri. Though it wasn't always well received by the critics, as a matter of fact, it was down out hated by the critics. And that probably tells you something in itself, that it's probably a pretty good show. The Beverly Hillbillies is not only one of the most popular shows of the 1960s, but it's one of the most popular in all of television. Through 9 seasons that it was on the air, the viewers loved the poor, simple antics of this family who moved into this upper-class neighborhood of Beverly Hills. It was among the top 20 most watched programs on television, with a number of the episodes as being the most watched television series of all time. This show set all sorts of records. It even collected a total of 7 Emmy nominations during its run, but the critics still hated it. They called it strained and unfunny, and also painful to sit through. But the series rose to #1 quicker than any other show within the first 3 weeks since its debut. This feat is unmatched to this day. It remained #1 for 2 years. The first 8 episodes that aired following the assassination of President John F. Kennedy were some of the most watched half-hour episodes in television history. All this is thought to be because the American public needed a break from the drama of what had happened to this country, and that was their escape. 13 of the show's episodes are ranked in the top 100 Nielsen-rated shows of all time. This series left its mark on television. The series creator, Paul Henning, got the idea for the show while he was on a trip through the South in 1959. He was visiting Civil War sites with his mother-in-law. He wondered what it would be like to take a family from the South that were country bumpkins and put them in the middle of a modern, sophisticated community. Originally, the show was to be set in New York, but because of the cost considerations, the setting was changed to Beverly Hills. During the early years of the show, there were a lot of rumors that persisted that Irene Ryan was actually younger than Donna Douglas, but that she wore extensive makeup as Granny, which she did. But Ryan was born in 1902, and Donna Douglas was born in 1933. Buddy Ebsen always joked about this rumor and thought how ridiculous it was. Now, the Clampett's truck, which is probably the biggest icon that they're remembered by, and most of the publicity photos are of them riding in it, driving through the posh neighborhoods in Southern California. But the truck is a 1921 Oldsmobile Model 46 Roadster. You see, it was lent to them by Cousin Pearl when the family moved to California. The truck body was found by the producer, Paul Henning, in a junkyard, and the studio had it built into a working truck. Now, there was an agreement between Filmways Productions and the owners of the mansion where the exterior shots were filmed at. This is called the Kirkby Mansion, and there was an agreement that stipulated that the grounds had to be cleaned up after filming, and that the address of the mansion was never to be divulged to the public. That's pretty much a no-brainer. Something that big and that obvious, it's pretty easy to figure out where it's at. Just before the 4th season got underway, the wife who owned the mansion got mad because she felt like they broke the agreement with her late husband, in that the mansion's address was leaked out to people. It caused an endless stream of tourists to come to the mansion looking for Jed and Granny. From that point on, Filmways was not allowed to film the mansion's exterior or any long shots of the mansion's grounds. Now, it's pretty well thought that the production company only paid $500 to film at this mansion, which is quite a deal. You'd never find that kind of value in today's economy. The television show's theme song was titled The Ballad of Jed Clampett. It was originally sung by the country western singer Jerry Scoggins, featuring the bluegrass duo Flatt and Scruggs. The song became the show's trademark and was also recognized for its popularity, landing it at number 44 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart for 1962. Now, there were plenty of guest stars that you always would recognize today that showed up on the Beverly Hillbillies, but probably the most famous of the bunch is Sharon Tate, in the fact that she's one of the victims of the Manson family killings. But she played a recurring role on this television series. She appeared about 15 times on the show in the role of bank teller Janet Trago. Many of the fans didn't recognize her at first because she was disguised wearing a brunette wig. Now, peppered throughout the series, you will find things from the show's creator, Paul Henning, that come from his childhood memories. Milburn Drysdale's bank was the fictitious Commerce Bank of Beverly Hills, but there's no doubt that he borrowed from the actual Commerce Bank in Kansas City, Missouri, which is located right next to Independence, Missouri, where the show's creator's childhood home was. At the end of the opening credits, you can see Jed start to point out something to the others towards the camera's left. In the network broadcast, the camera changes to show that Jed is pointing to a billboard for Kellogg's Corn Flakes, who was the sponsor of the show. As the car drives past it, the theme song continues, changing to the current slogan for Kellogg's, Kello Double Good, Kellogg's Best to You. In other openings to the show, they drive by a Winston cigarette truck with the Winston motto, Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. The original title of the show was supposed to be The Hillbillies of Beverly Hills. This was only seen in the original pilot episode, called The Clampett Strike Oil. It was then changed to The Beverly Hillbillies in the second episode. In that pilot episode, the narrator states, as the cast is just entering the gates of the mansion, let's take them back to their home in the Ozarks and see how this whole thing got started. But then in a later episode, it is mentioned that Granny is from Tennessee, saying that her character was born in Tennessee and then she moved to the Ozarks. And we make the assumption that it's probably Missouri, since that's where Paul Henning was from. Now, Donna Douglas's character of Elly May, she left every young boy drooling that watched the show. Now, you can't say that her character could be defined as the princess type, but that didn't stop Mattel, the toy company, from featuring her character as one of 3 Barbie dolls in its classic collection. Now, I do know that right before she died, she ended up suing Mattel for using her likeness without her consent on the doll, and it was settled out of court. Now, Donna Douglas set the fashion industry on fire in the fact that she popularized the wearing of jeans in women. After the first season aired, an executive for Levi Strauss was quoted as saying that Donna Douglas did more for the sale of blue jeans in 1 year than the Cowboys had done in 100. She made this simple denim look sexy and completely ramped up sales for Levi Strauss during this period. They had never seen anything like it before. Blue jeans had become a fashion icon. Now, towards the end of the show, the gentleman that portrayed Milburn Drysdale was Raymond Bailey, and he was already starting to suffer from the effects of Alzheimer's disease. And if you take a closer look at those later episodes, you can tell just by looking at him that he's not 100% healthy. During the last 6 seasons of each weekly episode, as it concluded, the closing tune played, and Donna Douglas spoke off screen, saying thanks, and we'll be back next week at the same time and same channel. This show is still fun to watch today. I love it. If you need to unwind and just forget about your troubles, watch the Beverly Hillbillies in syndication. You'll get a lot of laughs out of it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.